Coming from a perspective of being a co-prime sponsor on the 1284, which means that we're going to be able to put some guardrails on a runaway train that is currently the medical marijuana dispensary.
Where they can do pretty much what they want, how they want.
Well, you know, they have a business model, and I appreciate that, but, you know, there has to be a balance. And the legislation that we passed in this last session had to balance the interests of dispensaries, making certain that they were allowed to operate a business and make a profit, the rights of a patient to access their medicine, the rights of law enforcement to keep communities safe, and then local governments to control what happens in their municipalities.
In 1284, they're going to have to basically, their employees will have to have background checks.
Absolutely.
They're going to have to apply to the state for a license.
That's a deadline coming up on
right. And if they
August
don't
1st.
If they don't do it, they're basically out of business. Right?
And they have to pay a fee, a pretty hefty fee.
What is wrong with 1284?
Well, at the beginning you said this would make it a little more difficult to operate a business, and I disagree with the fact that it's a little more difficult. It's a great deal more difficult for this brand new industry that is in the very beginning.
Why is it more difficult?
Because the regulatory burdens that this bill will place on our industry are going to cause, well, the estimate is 80% of the existing businesses will go out of business. That's what even one of the lead senators, not Senator Spence, but a different senator, said that was his goal, to put 80% of these out of business. Now, that's an interesting goal, but keep in mind, you know, our economy in Colorado is suffering. I mean, people are having a hard time finding jobs. Businesses are closing. You know, the medical marijuana industry is a booming industry, and it's good for our state. We pay our taxes. We hire employees. We rent out vacant retail, commercial, and warehouse space. This was a positive economic engine, and my fear is that the government might have come in with a little bit too heavy of a hand at this very early stage of this industry, and it might crush this. And what you're going to see are people moving into what I call the tax-exempt, unregulated portion of the industry. They're not going to stop growing and selling marijuana. They're just going to stop growing and selling it openly in a manner in which the government can regulate it. They're going back underground. This industry's been underground for decades. It has every ability to go back there. So that is my fear, that we were on the verge of becoming legitimized, and then if these regulations are too onerous and too difficult to comply with, people are going to just opt out of that. Now, I don't think that is what most of these people want to do.
Do you want to do that, Nancy? Do you want to drive 75% of them out of business?
Yes. Maybe not 75%. I want to keep enough dispensaries, called centers now, health centers. I want to keep enough of them in business to provide the medicine for the patients who really need it. There are thousands and thousands of recreational users. I'm not interested in providing a retail establishment for recreational users to buy their drug.
How do you respond to that?
Well, you know, I'm not here to second-guess the opinions of a physician. The way the Constitution sets it up, it says if you want medical marijuana, you must have a doctor's advice to get it, a trained, licensed physician in the state of Colorado.
But you can't just walk in and get it off the street.
Correct. You've got to have that in advance before you get your medical marijuana.
But I'm sure Nancy's going to say, hey, listen, that may be how it's supposed to be, but reality is that people are getting it. People are coming up with
She'll say a minority of people cheat, and I'm not here to say that there isn't somebody out there who's getting marijuana who maybe doesn't have a legitimate medical condition. Right. I'm sure that happens with OxyContin, Percocet, any number of narcotics. People can get those. Now, does that mean that all of those narcotics should be made illegal and thrown away because of a few bad apples? Of course not, because those drugs do have legitimate medical purposes. Marijuana has a very positive health impact on thousands and thousands of Coloradans. I mean, there are people out there that you should talk to whose lives have been changed by this. It gets them off of highly addictive, dangerous prescription drugs.
But to her point, let's say 75% of the dispensaries were wiped out. Wouldn't there still be enough to serve the greater good and serve enough of the people?
I don't think so. I think the medicine right now, the marijuana right now is too expensive. The patients are paying too much. And logically, Economics 101, if you want to reduce the price of something, how do you reduce it? You increase the supply. supply and demand. That's what determines price in a free capitalist economy. And what we have now, the supply is too low and the demand is increasing every day. It's through the roof, and that is going nowhere. The government will not stop the demand. So as a result, if you decrease the supply, which these bills will do, the price will be driven further higher and higher. And who gets hurt the most from that will be the most vulnerable patient, the patient who doesn't have a job, who's on disability, who maybe served his country in Vietnam and is on a limited income. You know, those folks are going to suffer the most. The people, ironically, the people who need it the most are going to suffer the most.
But let me just talk to you and the listening audience about Senate Bill 109. That bill then will regulate the relationship between the doctor and the patient. Before that bill passed, there are doctors who are not in good standing in the state of Colorado as almost employees of dispensaries. A patient or a recreational user can go to those doctors with a complaint of a backache or most anything, and the doctor writes and fills out an application for a registry card. You know, that's going to stop with the passage of the other marijuana bill that went through the General Assembly this past session. So as we look forward at the number of dispensaries that will go out of business because they can't comply with the new regulation, or they haven't applied for their license and paid their fee in time, or they can't provide proof that they grow 70% of their marijuana themselves, there are going to be fewer and fewer recreational users, which is my hope.
Which is what you want.
Yes.
All right, take a break. We'll continue the discussion. Don't go away. We're back talking about medical marijuana. It's a fascinating subject. How much of this, Rob, do you think, and I'll go into a little different area here, are people that just don't want people smoking marijuana?
Oh, I think that's a big part of this. I mean,
forget all the other...
We're kind of in the equivalent of those first few days after Prohibition was amended out of the Constitution. You know, we're in that stage of our history when, yes, marijuana has a very complicated and controversial cultural history. It also has undeniable, scientifically proven medical benefits, but people's attitudes, you know, drive this, and a lot of these attitudes are based on lack of information, lack of knowledge. You know, somebody's driving by and sees a dispensary out there advertising, or maybe they open
and they think to themselves,
it's somehow...
And you were saying, by the way, Nancy is one of the more progressive people that you're dealing with.
Oh, by far. She's one of the more reasonable elected politicians over there, no question. And I hope my compliment doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt. Do you think, Nancy,
yes,
someday that marijuana will be legal in this country?
I don't know if it will or not. I hear rumors that in 2012 there'll be an issue on the ballot in Colorado. My concern about legalizing marijuana has to do with the young people who will have access to it. I read statistics from the American Academy of Pediatrics and for other medical people talking about the fact that a young person's brain isn't fully developed until about the age of 25. And I'm concerned about people who are young.
Impressionable. But don't you think it's like alcohol? When we were kids, if people are going to try it, they're going to try it. See, I think, well, I would disagree with you. I think it's inevitable that marijuana is eventually going to be legal in this country. I think for one basic reason. We have a really tough economy, and it may not get better for a while. This would certainly help, wouldn't it?
You know, I just don't buy that economy
You don't like
argument.
that argument at all?
You know, certainly I think this state needs to talk about jobs in the economy without a doubt. But that doesn't mean we're going to legalize and bring businesses into the state.
Would it help the crime rate?
That doesn't serve society
You think it would help the crime rate?
No.
You don't?
No.
Do you agree with any of those arguments I just made?
I don't. It's going to be legal because America is a free country.
You just think it should be legal?
Our people love freedom. Prohibition was completely antithetical to our national spirit. Marijuana has been legal for the majority of our country's history. The Founding Fathers grew it on their plantations. It is harmless. Alcohol is so much more harmful than marijuana to the human body and to society and to our culture. There's no question that this policy has to end.
I've got about a minute left.
It's against federal law. Let's mention that.
It's against federal law.
Yes.
It's against the law of the United States.
And also,